How's it going, everybody? Bryan Alvarez here on Wrestling Observer Live. We are here every day, Monday through Friday, noon Pacific, 3 Eastern, Sundays, 3 Pacific, 6 Eastern. We got a lot to get into on the show today. It's Thursday, and we are back. Man, we're back in the saddle after the new year. We finally have brand new editions of AEW and NXT going head-to-head. They were last night. Not the two best shows I ever saw. They weren't terrible, although there was a segment on AEW that I didn't get quite as much feedback as I got for the wedding, and I guess I shouldn't because the wedding probably did double the number of viewers, but man, did people hate that Brandi Rhodes segment on AEW last night. I just got flooded with emails. I didn't even check Twitter or my text message machine here, but man, did people not like that. Now, other than that, some good stuff on the show. Main event segment, tons of fun. Chris Jericho and Jon Moxley. Jon Moxley claiming he was joining the Inner Circle and then revealing that I would never join this. It's a stupid group. And he turned on Chris Jericho, so obviously that feud's going to continue. NXT had some decent wrestling, but I watched the show and, man, it just did not feel like a big ratings show. A lot of people from the NXT UK brand who... I have nothing against the people from the NXT UK brand, but no one watching the USA Network has any idea who half these people are. And so I just felt that it's not going to do like a blow-away number. We'll know ratings here in about an hour, and you can always get the ratings by following me on Twitter at Bryan Alvarez. We got the ratings for WWE Backstage, which I don't even know what to make of these numbers. It's just like sometimes they're up, sometimes they're down. Doesn't seem to matter who's on the show, who's not on the show. Like, I forgot there was even a show this Tuesday, but the show ends up doing almost as many viewers as the last time that CM Punk was on the show. So we can talk about that. And yes, the death of Pampero Firpo, who was 89 years old. We'll tell you about his career and so much more. If you want to send us a text message today, 425-780-7566. That's 425-780-7566. No phone calls, right? Back in a moment, Observer Live. Back in the show, Bryan Alvarez here, Wrestling Observer Live. Mike Sempervive, also of WrestlingObserver.com. I just got flooded with 3 more Nightmare Collective emails here. I'll get into that in a moment.
Oh, boy.
But first off here, one Catchmanian, best known as Pampero Firpo, native of Buenos Aires, Argentina, who grew up to headline almost every major pro wrestling arena in the world as one of pro wrestling's top stars in the 60s and 70s, passed away this morning at the age of 89. For the modern era, while not well known to many, Firpo was a wrestler that Randy Savage copied his interview style from The Voice, the Stream of Consciousness Flow. All were staples of the Firpo style. He'd retired from pro wrestling in 1981, although he had his final match in 1986, settled in San Jose, where he held many different jobs, including being a somewhat well-known celebrity male security guy. And for 25 years, he worked at the post office, where he processed the delivering of the Wrestling Observer newsletter. He spoke 8 languages. Father promoted boxing matches in Argentina, and he started wrestling there in 1953, became a star in Texas in 1957 under the name Ivan the Terrible. While wrestling there, he met Jack Dempsey, the boxing legend, who had a famous world title fight with Luis Firpo from Argentina. Dempsey came up with the idea of him being the son of Luis Firpo. The name stuck with him for the rest of his career, although for whatever reason, Ed Francis in Hawaii hated the name, and so he was a major star there as the Missing Link. At other times, he dropped the Firpo name and was just the Great Pampero. 2 runs as a headliner in MSG, first in the early 60s, as the partner of the Great Antonio, and the second, 1972, rival of WWF champion Pedro Morales, best known for his 70s run in Detroit, where he, the Sheik, and Bobo Brazil were the area's top 3 stars during a business boom. He was one of the most believable, crazy wrestlers in history. He was short, maybe 5'8", and at 240 build is one of the strongest men in wrestling, using the claw as one of his finishers. So 89 years old. I remember about 25 years ago when we had the big rash. Actually, it was earlier than that, probably 20 years ago still, when we had the big rash of under 40 deaths in wrestling. Dave noted that in this business, for whatever reason, wrestlers usually die young or they get pretty old. And Pampero here was 89 years old, so he was one of those that lived to be a ripe old age, 89 years old. So there you go, voted in the Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame in 2018. Any thoughts on Pampero, Mike?
He's one of those guys, far predates me, but if you had a chance to see him up in Detroit or in Texas, there are a lot of people that believe that he and Wild Bull Curry belong in the Hall of Fame, and that's how big of stars that they were. And if you want to see Pampero Firpo do his ooh yeah, if you look up Polynesian Pro Wrestling back in the days when it was still owned by High Chief Peter Maivia and he was still alive, if you Google that, you can see the introduction to the television show that actually features him saying, "Welcome to Polynesian Pro Wrestling," and giving the ooh yeah, and that's obviously where famously Randy Savage got it from. We have lost a couple people. I'm trying to see. I don't know if Cowboy Bob Ellis at this point may be the oldest professional wrestler out there. He's 90. There aren't many more. Unfortunately, I know Dominic DeNucci, I think, is being honored at something relatively soon. He is pushing 90 years old as well, too. So it's nobody lasts forever, but certainly left a very storied history, one of which, if you have old magazines from the 60s and the early 70s, ones that are filled with memories of Pampero Firpo.
Holy smokes, these AW emails that I have gotten here as a result of all of this. A lot of people did email last night also about Alex Shelley. So happy that he was, in fact, the mystery partner for Kushida. They'll be wrestling next week. But let's just go through these here, because I don't know what more there is to say. Mike Sempervive here says, "It is amazing how well NXT is booking their women's division."
Stop with it, boy.
With his name might be Mike Sempervive.
Just stop, Bryan.
I have no proof it's not.
Let's go.
It's amazing how well, and I have no idea why this bothers you. It's amazing how well NXT is booking their women's division with simple 6-person tags. Meanwhile, AEW is pulling the Brandi Rhodes disaster. Bryan Alvarez here writes, "That women's title match on Dynamite, absolutely ridiculous. It defied the levels of stupidity. It is borderline WWE level. Where was the referee during that entire sequence?" Well, actually, they explained where the referee was. He was outside with Riho, although I don't know why he had to be out there for 5 minutes. AEW needs fixing in their women's division, and quick. "What the heck is going on with AEW's women division?" Sarah says. "We demanded an alternative to WWE. I didn't imagine horrible gimmicks like the Nightmare Collective." This person says, "I think we've given enough weeks for the Nightmare Collective to be any redeeming quality for AEW TV. One thing is clear, it's not working. It is plaguing the entire women's division." This person says, "The Nightmare Collective, it is not working. It's an abomination that curbs the potential of their women's division. Every week, it ruins the entire show for me and leaves a sour taste in my mouth. Brandi Rhodes needs to go away." This person says, "Either the Nightmare Collective faction needs to be taken off AEW television or tweaked big time. It is a total channel changer for me and fans who truly want to enjoy AEW." These are only emails, by the way. I'm not talking text messages. "Ruining a potentially great match," Alistair says, "between Riho and Statlander with interference nonsense is not an alternative to WWE. It is WWE. And it being the Nightmare Collective only hammers that home." Ash says the Nightmare Collective thing in AEW is not working. It's horrible in all caps. Ruins the entire show for me. And then this person here wrote a tome. I'm not even going to read this because it's about 5,000 words. But it starts with, "Have never emailed you before, but I remember you talking about how people have emailed you after bad segments. I thought I would try it." He hates it, and there's a lot of bad words in here. Ken here, "I tried watching a full episode of AEW tonight, made it 51 minutes. Dr. Luther was my breaking point. Another new roster member who Jim Ross didn't know when they haven't even established their core talent. I am DONE done. Thank you for all the hard work," they add. And
Did anybody from the Dark Order write in saying they love it because it takes all of the heat off of any segment that they're in at this point?
Not yet. James here, "Everything about the Riho Statlander match angle was the worst. The kind of rubbish that turned me off to watching Raw, SmackDown, WWE in general in one segment." And there are many more, by the way. Dan here, "Please, never again. I literally had to turn on the Spanish language track during Statlander Riho. Brandi was that bad. Negative go away heat. Brandi, it's really bad. She's channeling heel Michael Cole. Nobody should be doing that. Well, to be fair, there's a big difference here. She's not heel Michael Cole, because Michael Cole was your lead announcer. Brandi is just a heel wrestler. So I can't make that. Now, if you want to compare Brandi to Stephanie McMahon, you can do that. But let me tell you something. If there is one comparison I wouldn't want to have, it's to be compared to Stephanie McMahon. The worst go-away heat on Raw in a long, long time was Stephanie McMahon. So yeah, people didn't like that.
Well, can you blame them?
Oh, God, I got 3 emails while I was ranting.
Man.
This person wants AEW to have a Nightmare Collective versus Dark Order loser leaves town match that ends in a double DQ. Both factions have to be abolished.
There it is. Surprised they didn't ask for it to be a scaffold match where all 4 fall off at the same time.
I can't believe this person says how hard the NXT women's division trumps the AEW women's division. I'm not saying the talent isn't there, but the booking on AEW is all-time horrible.
Well, here's the thing. The talent, and this is not, no offense to anybody, the talent isn't there, especially in comparison to NXT. So then when you double down and have a bunch of storylines that don't make any sense or have interference in matches that people don't want to see interfered with, you're going to have this problem. They are striking out with this one the same way they have with the Dark Order. Can they tweak it? We'll see. Certainly doesn't sound like people want to see it tweaked.
All I know is this. I know it's more fun to play the bad guy because everybody always wants to be a heel. But I have seen Brandi at these events. And Brandi, as actually her real persona, is of immense value to this company. Why she has to go out there and play heel, I have absolutely no idea. I mean, it's miscast as miscast can be. But apparently she wants to do it. Back in a moment. Observer Live. Back in the show, Bryan Alvarez here, Wrestling Observer Live. Mike Sempervive, also of WrestlingObserver.com. Sarah says, I remember Brandi being a great babyface just last year. Best buddy of Flip Gordon. Where did that woman go? I have no idea. That would be 10 times as effective. But for some reason, she has to be a heel. I have absolutely no idea why. Especially when her husband, who we all know is her husband, because in storyline, that's her husband, is the top babyface. It's just baffling.
Haven't we seen this with Triple H and Stephanie before? Several times, I'm sure, at some point, with her being a heel and him being a babyface?
Yes, and guess what? It sucks.
Yeah, well, see, they've done a couple of things that seem to have mirrored that, and I think they've done it in some ways for parody's sake, whether it be on BTE when the whole lead up to this was happening, or since leaving WWE, he's always had those digs there. And I think sometimes there's been parody there, and they've kind of poked fun at it. But this is one of those times where the mirror isn't good. And, you better kind of break it, because it should remind you of the ugliness of this past week on TV and the response that you got for it. This isn't working. It hasn't been working. And that's okay. And I'm not saying they have to drop everything. Look, the Dark Order was killed from day one. They're still continuing on with it now because they have an idea with it, and I'm not saying that they need to shelve, I guess, this group or even Brandi Rhodes as a heel, but they really need to step back and really see how this is being presented and how it's shaping up and matching up with what's taking place on the other network and how their own fans are taking to this and how they're looking at it as the thing everybody ran away from and left. That's why we have this promotion. Why are you bringing it in here and forcing it on us?
Alrighty, this person here, by the way, on our board says, I don't know her personally, but I'm guessing she wants to be a heel because she doesn't want to be just Cody's wife. Well, dude, if she doesn't want to be just Cody's wife, then at the very beginning of AEW, she shouldn't have been Brandi Rhodes, and they shouldn't be doing storylines where she's his wife.
But that's the thing, is she's going to be his wife, and that's okay. They've established that far more before this promotion started. Her not having a place because her husband is a major player, that shouldn't be the case. If they want her to have a case, that's fine. It's just that how this whole thing is being presented, that's the issue. And fine if she doesn't want to be just Cody's wife on the outskirts of the company who shows up for PR events. That's okay if she wants to do something else. It just doesn't seem to be that this is it.
Now, we did get emails about the last segment of AEW. This person says it was awesome. Jericho and Moxley did a great job playing with the emotions of the crowd to the point where they started to chant, "You sold out" to Moxley. I got to say that watching that segment last night, I mean, I've said this 1,000 times about wrestling. Everybody, I shouldn't say everybody. Let me start over again. There are people that think that the only good wrestling is when you do a swerve, okay? These people are in the minority, and it's not true, okay? Every now and then, a well-booked swerve is great. But in general, some of the best wrestling, some of the best match outcomes, some of the best finishes, it's what you knew was going to happen because it made sense. And when I watched that segment last night, I mean, myself personally, there was not one moment in that where I thought that at the end of it, Moxley wasn't going to attack and humiliate Chris Jericho. Like, it was so obvious. But that's not a bad thing at all. That's a great thing. Because when you're thinking in that direction and you're watching it, and there's that brief moment where Moxley looks in the camera and he winks, and like, you know it's coming. And that makes the whole thing even better when it happens, okay? But for whatever reason, I would like to come on here and say that everybody knew how this was going to end. But in fact, I can't, because the crowd did chant, "You sold out" at Jon Moxley. I was dying. Like, you thought that he joined the Inner Circle? I mean, that's fine. I mean, if you thought he joined the Inner Circle and then to you it was a swerve and you loved it, that's great, okay? But to me, not for 1 second did I think that he was actually joining. And we've seen this angle a million times, but Jericho and Moxley and the Spanish god Sammy Guevara, like every single one of them, they were so great in this segment that even though it was something you've seen a million times, I just loved it. And I thought that Moxley's delivery at the end, when he just matter-of-fact announced, "I was kidding. I'm not joining your group. It's a stupid group." I was dying. He was so good in this segment. Moxley was so good because, you know, Moxley's got a funny side to him, but in WWE it was like they just went all the way in that direction. Like he was just a comedy goof. And so, like, he was just dead. He was DOA in WWE by the end. But in this, like, he had a chance to show a little bit of that side. He got to do a delivery of a line that made you laugh, but then he just ran roughshod. And at no point in this was he like a comedy character. He was like, I hate to say this, but I've been watching a lot of him lately. He was Stone Cold Steve Austin, because Austin had that funny side about him where he'd lead the heel on into thinking that he was going to be their friend, or he was really going to drink beer with him this time. He wasn't going to pull the football away. But then, of course, at the end, he got his funny line in, he hit the stunner, he left him laying, and he went. It was just so great. I loved that segment.
It's, you know, this is the guy, ironically, when he was on Steve Austin's show, that when he spectacularly failed on there for so many, that a lot of his supporters, including me, kind of looked at and went, well, you know, he's in this scenario, in this situation, he's not going to be able to be him. In AEW, he can be more him, and we're getting more of Jon Moxley the way it should be, you know, as Dean Ambrose gets shaken off of him. The one thing I think about the crowd response is, though, and this is the big difference between Wednesday of both shows in comparison to Raw and to SmackDown, is those fans didn't really believe it, but they knew their role and to play along. And I'm not saying that AEW fans do this in lockstep, but they are amped up and they know what to respond for. And the same is the case for NXT, I think, too. Most of the time, they know how to respond and what, you know, what works for the show that's taking place in the ring. And they want to be a part of that show, and they want to play along with it. And I think that's why you got those chants of "you sold out." I don't think anybody believed that Jon Moxley all of a sudden was going to go driving off in the, let's split the difference, $900,000 car,
now
$875,000.
They admitted $750,000, which is the actual price.
$750,000 car. They weren't all going to drive off together into the sunset, and those fans knew it, but they knew that they could make it a little bit better, and they knew what their role was. And I think that's the advantage that AEW and NXT have over Raw and SmackDown, and I think that's what makes it a better show. There's going to be times like last night with NXT. I mean, NXT was a really good show. I thought it was a good show. There was nothing terrible about it or anything like that, but there were times where people were just sitting on their hands. They were exhausted, they were tired, they were whatever it was. That's going to be the case sometimes, but when it comes to the big stuff, the fans certainly can enhance it with how they respond.
This person says, last night my girlfriend walked into the room, took a quick glance at Sammy Guevara, and immediately stated, he's so annoying to me, and then she said a very bad thing, which I can't read here on the air. But
that's good.
Yes, he's the greatest, because he is a heel that is so annoying, you just want to punch him. But you don't want to turn the channel, because every week you want to see, how is he going to be humiliated this week? This is the ultimate heel. This is not like Baron Corbin, who, granted, Baron Corbin is in a main event position, and Sammy Guevara is just, he's a soldier in the main event group whose job is to just go out there and be annoying and get beat up. But, I don't think there's anybody on the AEW roster that could play the Sammy Guevara role in the inner circle better than Sammy. He is the greatest. And every single week, something happens and he gets humiliated. And it's like Wile E. Coyote and the Roadrunner. It never gets old. Every week I could watch this. He got DDT'd last night. Oh, no, he's way better than Six. People hated Six. Don't you remember X-Pac Heat?
But that's the thing. It turned into that, but when it was at its best, there's a guy like Sammy Guevara. Here's the thing with records. Sammy Guevara could be 0-558. He could face off against whoever the undefeated world champion of the roster is. There are still people that are going to want to believe and root extra hard for the guy to beat him just because of who he is. And I think, he can trail off in X-Pac Heat at some point, but he's got the good part of it right now.
All right, we've got a couple of news notes. WWE Backstage, I have no idea why, but the show on Tuesday, 124,000 viewers, the fifth highest of the series. Now, granted, part of this could be that the show started 12 minutes late because there was a game on, and so it's possible that the game, some of those viewers just fell asleep or didn't turn the channel or whatever. But 124,000 viewers, up from 97,000 on the New Year's Eve show. And 124,000, that's just slightly under the last time that CM Punk was on this show. These numbers just wildly fluctuate, so I wouldn't read too much into them, but 124,000 viewers.
I'm pretty sure that those numbers wildly fluctuate with everything that's not live sports on those channels. There's very little destination programming oftentimes because of live sports. So numbers vary wildly there anyway. There's almost zero anybody can gain from any, unless they take a completely different type of approach and make it destination programming, which it is not. It fills time. I have absolutely no idea what can possibly be gotten out of FS1 ratings other than maybe to look at FS1's demographics. I don't think you gain anything out of looking at these ratings from a wrestling point of view.
Back in a moment, Observer Live. Back in the show, Bryan Alvarez here, Wrestling Observer Live. Mike Sempervive, also of WrestlingObserver.com. Steven here says, congrats big time to you and Mike, all your hard work. If that is the missing link that I remember, not to be confused with Dewey Robertson, he holds a unique place in wrestling trivia history. In 1979, in the studios of KDBS Channel 3 in Shreveport, the guy with long hair and a beard, introduced as being from Columbia, was defeated by Stan Lane in the opening match on the first edition of the telecast, introduced to viewers as Mid-South Wrestling. So there you go. That's one of his places in history of many. This person here says, I couldn't believe they actually brought Alex Shelley for the Dusty Cup. I can.
Yeah, absolutely.
Kushida needed a mystery partner. Alex Shelley was working there, he did the week as a guest trainer at the Performance Center. This wasn't all that long ago. So he's available, and so boom, there he is. And they're working next week, and I'm very happy to hear that. Very excited. Alex Shelley's great.
That team was great. The team was absolutely great, and that's them going at it with Kozlov and Rocky Romero. I mean, the Young Bucks, when those combinations were new, and that's the one thing is they got long in the tooth, always seeing the same teams battling with each other. But when those teams were new and out there and putting in work for New Japan, it was something to behold. Alex Shelley and Kushida, the Motor City Machine Guns, I didn't think it was going to be possible to move on from them. And when Shelley stuck around there and started teaming up with Kushida, it seemed to be such an odd combination to me. And they were just fantastic. It's such great work to watch those two. Now I want to go back and watch them on New Japan World. I mean, they were excellent. We're not going to get that same thing surely in WWE, but getting a little taste of it for people that had never seen it, good on you.
This person here says, I love that Moxley-Jericho angle at the end of Dynamite. Just a classic babyface fooling the dumb heels and taking away the car keys. That's right, Jericho's been grounded, as has Sammy.
It's not that hard. It doesn't have to be that hard. Now, I'll say this, though. I don't know if you have surely felt the weight of a champagne bottle before, correct? Those things are heavy.
Yeah, he drank it on the Christmas show.
The better the champagne you get, the thicker the bottle. And regardless, getting hit in the head with a bottle should be enough to, in some eras, usher out a whole lot of blood from your head, but at the very least leave you out cold. I think, and I know they were going for a little bit of comedy there, but I thought that was actually a little heavy-handed. I didn't think Moxley, I thought delivering some other shot to him could have worked. Smashing a champagne bottle over Rick.
Oh, come on. It was his own bubbly.
I guess,
what
but
could be
to
better?
Me, that's such a heel thing to do. I don't know if the baby face for the come up in the beginning of the angle needs to smash the champagne bottle. I think the DDT through the table could have been good.
For instance, my mother walked in during the MJF segment, had no idea who he was. By the end of the segment, she wanted to kill him because she thought he was another word I can't say here on the air. Yeah, MJF was great last night. And of course, your mother walked in. He's talking about banging DDP's daughters. Yeah, of course she's not going to like this guy. What a despicable act.
He's one note for the most part, although the notes he's starting to gain a lot more. And the MJF, it's so early in his career. It's like people that I think kind of hammered on Austin Theory. It's like, my God, Austin Theory basically debuted on WWN, with Evolve. Like it's tough for people to try to develop when there's always constant eyeballs and constant pressure and light shined upon them. And I think that's another case too. It's like, it's never going to be perfect, but gives them some time to actually work through some things here too.
Look at this guy. Shut up, a-hole. Brandi is hot as hell. You're jealous. And then he alerted me that I've been blocked. He sent me a text saying I've been blocked from his texts. So there's always one, everybody. I don't know what her being hot has to do with any of this. But apparently that's enough for this guy. All right, this person here says, AEW doesn't do anything without purpose, I'm told. Pride themselves on making sense. Yet Cody being a top babyface while his wife is leading a heel stable is beyond dumb. It's like when Ambrose was a heel on WWE, Renee had to pretend like she didn't know what was going on. Well, that was weird too, yes. But
to be fair,
there are people married in storyline.
James Carville and Marty Matlin and Mary Matlin, wherever hell her name is in real life. I mean, I think it's the same thing with what's her name? Trump's Kellyanne Conway and her husband, who violently hates Trump on the other side of things. I mean, you get that with people in powers and in households, and you do have people that are on the opposite side of the spectrum, even though they're doing something related to each other professionally. It's just, again, it's this angle, it's this group. It's not necessarily her or her being a quote-unquote rule breaker or bad girl. It's just more about how this whole presentation is and how it keeps popping up in places where people don't want it.
This person says, Brandi has totally become Stephanie. Heel, go-away heat on TV, and a face doing good deeds outside AEW. Hey, I'll say it again. There's a lot of things I don't want at AEW. I don't want to watch Raw on Wednesdays, but above all, everything else, I do not need Stephanie McMahon on AEW television. I don't need Stephanie McMahon on WWE television. I don't need Stephanie McMahon on any television. And it doesn't matter whether she's hot or not. This person here says, NXT was kind of boring last night, but that Matt Riddle interview was gold. Tell me about it. That was the greatest. And the fans ate it up. Because this is not a revelation. He's completely different from everybody else. There is nobody like Matt Riddle. Matt Riddle needs to either stay in NXT forever, or he needs to go to the main roster, and I don't know how this will happen. Vince will probably have to go to the moon, but he needs to not be changed in any way. And the good thing, I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing, because, when they want you to change and you don't, that's bad. But I don't think Matt Riddle can be anything except Matt Riddle. So, they can give him a script or whatever. But, the one thing about Matt Riddle is you give that guy a script, he's still going to deliver it the same way. It's going to suck, but the delivery is going to be awesome. So, all I know is it was just... He was more Matt Riddle than ever before on NXT last night. It was so great. He was just the greatest.
Who's going to be there to knock off Brock Lesnar? I don't know. There's a lot of people who it could be when it comes to the Royal Rumble, and I am worried about Matt Riddle on the main roster, just basically because of Matt Riddle interacting with Vince McMahon. But, man, Brock Lesnar and Matt Riddle is something I want to see. I don't want to see... I think about Brock Lesnar and Keith Lee. I think about Brock Lesnar and Outsiders. Brock Lesnar and Drew McIntyre. It's not that I wouldn't want to see that match. It's just that of almost everything else that's out there, even bringing in fantasy outsiders from the fight world, it's still Matt Riddle who's the person that I want to see Brock Lesnar go up against at WrestleMania. And B, that's how I want to see him ascend to the main roster. I don't see any other way to do it. I really don't.
As far as this, I was watching AEW with my partner. They only occasionally watch wrestling with me, but they still notice the difference in how everybody talks. They pointed out how people on AEW talk more naturally and not in this weird WWE language. Well, that is one big positive. No matter what you think of the Nightmare Collective, at least everyone talks like a human. Even Chris Statlander talked like a human last night.
She's confused.
Her gimmick is she's an alien. She talks more like a human than the actual humans on Raw.
Oh, by the way, let me do a collective Three Stooges slap of anybody that was in charge of hyping up anybody from Memphis appearing on AEW television and then pushing it all the way to dark. I guess I understand that. I do. Only Dave Brown was out there and they only showed a little bit of it, but I thought they were going to do something. And in the span of 2 hours, when you have the rock and roll there, when you have the boogeyman there, when you have some fun characters, the fact that nobody dropped in for a cameo at any point during the show, I wasn't a big fan of that one.
This person here says, speaking of the Dark Order, did Rob ever deliver a part of Dave Meltzer to them? It was Ken, and Ken did deliver a part of Dave Meltzer to them, but they never responded. So either they didn't believe it was really Dave Meltzer's hair, or they'd had enough of Ken.
What?
I don't know. So, yeah, never got a response to that one. Very, very sad. This person here says, speaking of champagne, this guy's going on and on. It's a Russo fan.
Oh, I thought it was going to be a Jerry Morrow question.
I don't know why I haven't blocked this guy yet, but he's a gimmick. So, we should be thankful, this person says, that the Nightmare Collective segment wasn't the main event of the show. The positioning of the match on the card was a bit of a giveaway that some shenanigans would be involved. What? Because it was in the middle of the show? I don't even understand what that means. But yes, thank God it was not the main event. This person says, I thought Jericho's best line this week was when he said the car was $750,000 more than everybody in the audience made combined. Yes. It's a poor crowd there. Somehow still bought all those tickets. This person says, I actually liked the inset commercial break yesterday where I could watch Hangman Page just drink beer. Hey, listen, if you want to do stuff like Hangman drinking beer or Sammy holding up cards that are funny, asking whoever for a date.
Dude, did you see Salma Hayek at the Golden Globes?
I did not.
She never mind.
Anyway, knock yourself out, okay? All I ask is that don't do something during the break that's important, and then don't tell me about it. But if you want to have Hangman drinking, if you want to have Jericho pouring bubbly for everybody, great, do it. That's fine. I don't care.
You know what I want? I want one of these.
But no interviews.
Well, this is what I want. I want one to just be an ISO shot of Jack Swagger at one of these points where it's just Jake Hager and it's 3.5 minutes of just the camera just ISO'd on Jake Hager's face as he doesn't say anything.
This person says, could you imagine if Jim Cornette was leader of the Dark Order? If the leader's office...
No.
Well, he points out astutely... Okay, I don't think that Jim Cornette is the leader of the Dark Order, but They're trying to make you think that he is. Because in the Exalted One's office, there was a tennis racket. And there was also a pair of Jim Cornette-style glasses. Now, if you think about Jim Cornette, and you think about his hatred of, like, the Young Bucks, Kenny Omega, and you think about what the Dark Order has done to the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega, I mean, it makes perfect sense. It's not going to happen, especially after what happened with NWA Power. But, you know, maybe they'll never reveal who the guy is, but the tennis racket and the glasses will always be there. And for fans who pick up on it, they can imagine that the leader of the Dark Order, the Exalted One, is in fact James E. Cornette.
I just still want to know how Nakazawa escaped the room so he could be at Ryo's side last week, but then get found again by Kenny Omega. I still need to know what happened the first time around with him and Pac.
We don't know.
I think I said Omega.
I don't know what happened
Pac
yesterday
there, yeah.
either. And, like, people on the board were like, oh, well, what do you want them to do? Just, like, show footage of the guy getting CPR in the back? I don't care. Like, I mean this in the nice way possible. I don't care what happened to Kenny's friend, but I want to know if Kenny got his hands on Pac.
Yes. At least say
It'd take
we
2
haven't
seconds
seen...
for him to rush into the room and Pac is gone.
Either
Done.
that or, again, update it. Just update it. We haven't seen him. We don't know what's going on. We'll have an update for you on Dark, online, next week on the show, whatever.
Can you imagine, because, you know, there's all this talk about watching old NWA shows, and can you imagine if, like, one of Dusty Rhodes' buddies got beat up backstage on a 2-hour WCW Saturday night, and they never did angles on that show, and Dusty rushed backstage, and we never had any sort of follow-up whatsoever. They always gave you a follow-up. Even if it was the announcers explaining, well, yes, Dusty got back there and the Horsemen were gone, and we'll have an update on so-and-so's condition on next week's show. Whether we saw it or whether they told us about it, there was always an update, okay? Kenny Omega and Pac is a major feud. Pac attacks Michael Nakazawa backstage. He's putting him in the brutalizer. Kenny rushes backstage, and that's the last we saw or heard about it on the show. Not an update, not video, not audio, nothing. No update about what happened. Back in a moment, Observer Live. Back in the show, Bryan Alvarez here, Wrestling Observer Live. Mike Sempervive, also of WrestlingObserver.com. This person says, Bryan, this year's Royal Rumble is a long time. In a long time, is starting to feel like it's going to be a great show. But with that said, is the 30th person that comes out have to be someone that is a huge surprise? I'm trying to translate this. This was, somebody wrote it on their phone. Anyway, he says, can we be heading towards Brock versus CM Punk? Listen, everyone, okay? Anything is possible in pro wrestling for the most part. But when doing your fantasy booking or your ideas for where things might be going, there's 3 things that it'll probably be in your best interest to just get out of your mind. One of them is CM Punk wrestling. One of them is AEW and New Japan working together. And one of them is SmackDown doing a sports-centric product, okay? Any of these things might happen. But if you're sitting there expecting them to happen anytime soon, you're just wasting your time. So no, I do not think that number 30 is going to be CM Punk and that he is going to eliminate Brock Lesnar and they'll do that match at WrestleMania. Now, could it happen? Yes. Should you be like getting all excited about the possibility? No. Just like you probably shouldn't be getting excited about the possibility of AEW New Japan and SmackDown doing a sports-centric product. Those are the big 3 right now. I'm sure there are more, but like those are the big 3. Later on tonight, myself and Vinny are going to be here recapping the AEW and NXT shows from last night. We'll go over all of the matches, all the angles, what everybody thought about all of them. Should be a fun time. We do it every week for subscribers. And as noted yesterday, subscribers to WrestlingObserver.com have had the opportunity to listen to 1,100 podcasts in 2019 alone, and 12,000 dating back to 2005. So
wow,
we just keep rattling along here. We got 2 shows today. That's me alone. We got other people doing podcasts as well. All sorts of great stuff. Back tomorrow with Mike and Jim Valley, who's returning from Japan. If he is alive, he better be wearing that mask here, as Chris Jericho said. And a lot of other things as well, so check it out. And that's it. Thanks, Mike, as always. Callers and listeners, everybody to the studio. Talk to you next time. Wrestling Observer Live.